The Truth Commission in South Africa has received huge support from all sorts of people all over the world for reasons they can't quite fully understand. In some cases, it's the purely confessional. Desmond Tutu, well, he's religious. Very religious, and we'd be surprised if he wasn't. I happen to be secular, and very secular, and yet we are like brothers together. He'll be an older brother, and we have a huge rapport with each other because he expresses things in religious, spiritual language and formulations that I'll express to be very much the same things, but not believing that I might go to heaven or not go to heaven after I die. A totally different worldview. But the ethical and spiritual, if you like, core is very similar. He speaks a lot about forgiveness. People ask me, how did I manage to forgive Henry? I didn't forgive Henry. Henry didn't say, I'm sorry I blew off your arm. How can you do that? I would have felt awkward. He said, I'm going to the Truth Commission. He's part of that process of transforming the country. And to me, that's part of the answer to the question put to me about the skepticism that comes mainly from our friends in the human rights community. Thou shalt go to jail is seen as justice, and justice is equated with sending people to jail or sometimes even hanging them or taking away money from them. And our notion of justice is, to my mind, far more profound. It's restorative justice, which helps people to re-enter the community whose norms and standards they violated. And that's something very strong in African culture and tradition. The theme of Ubuntu, I am a person because you're a person. I can't separate my humanity from acknowledging your humanity. And we apply it even in our legal decisions in some cases. For example, in defamation cases, my colleague Yvonne Mokgoro and I pushed, and now the court has accepted, that you don't look for how much money has to be paid, you look for apology, so that the people come closer together and you restore the dignity by re-establishing connections between people rather than by segregating the person who's violated from the society. And to the extent that we have managed to get constitutionalism embedded in South Africa, a constitutional court that's playing a powerful role in our society and frequently ruling against government. And sometimes big things. We had a case recently, government awarding tenders running into billions of rands, that's hundreds of millions of dollars and so on. And the court takes its decision on the law without fear or favor. And it gives confidence to the people. To our mind, that is more important in terms of restoring a sense of justice, the application of justice in our society, than if we'd sent Henry to jail. What about the person who commanded Henry? What about the political officials who were in charge who didn't know what Henry was doing? What about the president at the time? He's still living. We feel better in South Africa. The President de Klerk is still living and criticizing the government than if he'd been sent to jail for not doing enough to stop the violence that happened even while he was in office in the late period. That would have kept our society divided all the time. And so the restorative justice notions, to our mind, enlarge the concept of justice. We're not trying to destroy the notion of justice. We're trying to give extra dimensions to the concept of justice. It's very country-specific. It's very moment-specific. If the TRC hadn't been part and parcel of a major transformation of our country in all sorts of other ways, in which the dignity of people who'd suffered so much in the course of the struggle was being reclaimed and restored through the vote, through the houses that are being given, through the access to the schools, through the things that people can dream of that they couldn't dream of before, then it might have seemed like simply a political deal done to allow the old regime to get away with it, or because we're not strong enough to put pressure on them. I'll just conclude with this. When people contrast our situation with, at the time, with what was happening with General Pinochet in Chile, and they would ask me, Albie, how is it you support the prosecution of General Pinochet, and yet you don't demand the prosecution of people playing a similar role in South Africa? And I had to think about it. And sometimes your intuitions are good guides, because your intuitions are based on a lifetime of experience and thinking and thought. It's not just personal. It's not just because I want South Africa to find an easy way out. And then my intuition said, yes, in South Africa that was the right way to go, and no, in Chile it wasn't the right way to go. And then I start interrogating my intuitions, maybe a bit like Gandhi, with his experiential truth. And I'm thinking, Pinochet gave himself amnesty. In our case, amnesty was agreed to by the liberation movement, partly to deal with our own problems. We didn't want to come into the new society with secrets. We had violated our own principles and norms, and we wanted a mechanism to deal with that. But also we wanted to move our country forward. We didn't want democracy to be associated with chaos, with destruction, with rancor. And that was Mandela's great role. He was steady at the helm while we were transforming, integrating armies, tearing down the apartheid signs, reshaping our country very, very dramatically, and yet the water came out of the taps and the electricity ran and the buses were running. It was important to keep those things going. So that was number one. Pinochet gave himself amnesty. Number two, it was a blanket amnesty. Boom, everybody, all the things that happened, wiped out. When you do that, then you meet completely with the point that the questioner was asking. You're wiping it out. And the opposition in Chile had no option at that stage. To get to elections, to be able to function freely, they had to agree to that. General amnesty. In our case, you had to come forward, one by one, to acknowledge what you'd done. That's huge. And it wasn't pain-free. It wasn't pain-free. I would imagine people coming home at night and the children looking up, Daddy, is that what you were doing? In a perverse way, even maybe some wife saying, it's a very, very perverse thought, and I thought you were having an affair and you were only torturing somebody. It's telling the truth in front of the cameras, in front of the press, is paying some kind of price for what you've done. And amnesty was refused when people didn't tell the whole truth, in the killing of Steve Biko and in the killing of Chris Hani, General Secretary of the Communist Party. Amnesty was refused, so it wasn't just automatic. And finally, General Pinochet never bent the knee. He never acknowledged that what they did was cruel. And that's what keeps people's anger alive. There's never been an acknowledgement. And what our Truth Commission did was it removed any possibility of denial. Well, those are my final words, I think.